Hi, my name is Ryan, and I'm going to be talking to you about the four functions of nonverbal communication. And the four functions are facilitating cognitive meaning, encoding and decoding emotions, expressing affection and support, and aiding information and identity management. So the first function is to facilitate cognitive meaning, and we can aid in our cognitive meaning through 5 different ways, and that is through repetition, contradiction, complementing, accenting, and regulating. So repetition is the expressions that we take to reinforce our messages. So smiling like when we're happy. And on the other hand, there's contradiction, which is when we say one thing but we really mean the other. So we say we're fine, we're okay, but really we have a sad look on our face. Next, we look at complementing, which is how our nonverbal communication complements our verbal messages. So if I say, I'm angry at you and I am giving you kind of a mean stare, that would be my nonverbals complementing my verbal messages. The next way we facilitate our cognitive meaning is through accenting, and we use this when we want to emphasize a word or phrase. So saying like please or I'm begging you is kind of emphasis in how we emphasize the word please or begging, and that really has to do a lot with the pitch and tone of your voice. And finally, the last way we facilitate cognitive meaning is by regulating. And this is when we're trying to regulate how the conversation goes and for how long the conversation goes. So an example of this would be if we're talking and I start to turn away from you. I'm trying to send the nonverbal message that I want the conversation to end. The second function of nonverbal communication is encoding and decoding emotions. Encoding emotions is an individual's ability to display feelings. So we use nonverbal communication such as facial expressions or tone of voice or posture to display emotions like happiness, anger, sadness, fear, all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, other people's nonverbal communication towards us, such as their facial expressions or tone of voice, play a big part in our ability to decode emotions and try to figure out other people's feelings. The third function of nonverbal communication is to express affection or support. Some nonverbal ways in which we would express affection would be maybe a high five or a pat on the back. Some ways that we might express support for someone going through a tough time would be to give them a hug. And just as a side note, females are normally better at using nonverbal communication to express affection and support, and they also use it more often than males. And the final function of nonverbal communication is to aid in impression formation and identity management. So the nonverbal communication, like how we're dressed or our facial expressions, like if we're smiling a lot or if we're frowning, really plays a big role in people's first impressions of us and our first impressions of other people. And speaking of first impressions, a lot of times during those first impressions, there is miscommunication. And a lot of times there's miscommunication because we are not always aware of the nonverbal messages that we're sending to other people, or we're not very good at picking up nonverbal messages that people are sending to us. So it's really a good idea to practice your nonverbal communication. And finally, when you are practicing sending messages, try to focus on your facial expressions, like maintaining eye contact or smiling or nodding to show you're listening. Focus on your relational space between you and the other person, just different things like that. So that about wraps up this video. Hope you guys learned a little bit more about the 4 functions of nonverbal communication, and thanks for watching.